How can HBCUs safely and effectively reopen in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic? The ongoing impact of COVID-19 is causing institutions of higher education to make tough decisions about campus life for the fall of 2020. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution recently reported that Atlanta's three largest HBCUs, that's Morehouse College, Spelman College, and Clark Atlanta University, will only conduct classes online during the fall semester, basing their decisions on the recent surge of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the area and across the nation. Technology will play a pivotal role in providing a platform for students to learn and socialize during this hopefully temporary period of virtual learning. There has been a lot of conjecture and speculation about the capacity of HBCUs to deliver quality virtual learning experiences to their students. However, recent developments underscore positive trends for HBCUs in tech. For example, Diverse Issues recently reported that the streaming company Twitch and Community, these are Atlanta-based nonprofits, they're coming together to build an initiative aimed at providing competitive opportunities for HBCU students in esports. Also, Apple News just recently broke a story that says that Apple is teaming up with HBCUs to bring coding and creativity opportunities to communities across the United States. So on this episode of HBCU Mixtapes, we'll discuss how HBCU tech research is creating new opportunities for HBCUs to develop robust learning and social platforms that can help all universities mitigate the restrictions that the pandemic has imposed upon us. I can think of few people better to lead this conversation other than Dr. Kinnis Gosha. Dr. Gosha is the Hortenius Chenault Endowed Associate Professor in the Department of Computer Science and the Director of the Culturally Relevant Computing Lab at Morehouse College. He received a PhD in Human-Centered Computing from Clemson University, and he's a history maker because he was the first African-American to obtain a doctorate degree in human-centered computing in the nation. Dr. Gosha has received numerous awards and honors, and you can read more about him in the entry to this episode. So let's get right into it. Dr. Gosha, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, and we'll start now.
One thing that's really special about Morehouse is when you're regarded as one of the top HBCUs, you get so many offers and opportunities. I mean, when people are looking for the best of the best in terms of diversity and inclusion and making hires and for fellowships and scholarships and internships, prestigious internships, I mean, and jobs, people come to Morehouse to look for the best of the best. And so by being here, you kind of get first dibs at a lot of opportunities that may not get forwarded to a place like where I went to school, Albany State. Being a part of one of the biggest and most respected HBCUs definitely affords you opportunities that I mean, sometimes it blows my mind the way these kids end up in companies and they might not even have the best GPA or they might not have the most experience, but they're really smart. And lots of times they just don't have that opportunity. But at Morehouse, they get those opportunities. So I think that's one of the really special things about the college.
I noticed that about Morehouse men. And you know, I'm in the fraternity, you're in the fraternity. I'm a Alpha. I know you're a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. And so we know what it's like to be a part of an organization that has a certain culture and that looks out for each other. But it seems like Morehouse graduates, they automatically get in a similar type of fraternity of Morehouse men. And I think one of the reasons why companies are attracted to students from Morehouse is because Morehouse does more than just teach students. They also give them a certain etiquette, a certain style, a certain charisma that transcends just the book learning.
And I think it's part of what the experience is in the classroom. It's part of what the experience is outside the classroom, things that you'll get from student life and things like that. But I think the alumni is a really special part of it. The alumni is very passionate about the college, and they come back and they give back and they support and they mentor and they provide opportunities and share opportunities and life lessons. And being a part of that, as you call it, fraternity is huge. And even being in that network. And I think being in that network / fraternity is something that follows these students their whole career. And it's a beautiful thing when you can work hard and you can have opportunities to come out of that. It's not like you're fighting through a glass ceiling like a lot of folks have to do. You can lean on that network to say, hey, I'm great at this. Oh, well, let me introduce you to this person, right? Let me bring you to this interview, so it's really a place that offers a lot of upward mobility because you're in that Morehouse family.
That being said, there's probably some unique challenges with a school that has placed so much emphasis on student life, student culture, to go into a virtual learning environment. And so first, just tell us, what was your immediate thought when you heard this pandemic was going to last through the fall semester, and that this fall semester at Morehouse is going to look different than any fall semester that you've experienced in your whole tenure being there? How do you feel about that?
So at first, we were actually wanting to get students on campus in a limited capacity. That was the original plan. And then when the cases kept getting worse, especially in the state of Georgia, the presidents got together and aborted that plan and revised that plan to just focus on virtual. I think this serves an opportunity, not just at Morehouse, but people all over the world, where you either come out of this situation behind or you come out of the situation ahead, right? Part of my role at the college was really built around new programs. Currently, I'm the division chair for experiential learning and disciplinary studies. And one of the things I was tasked with before this whole thing happened was beefing up our online offerings. And so it just kind of happened. I was this person like pushing for online. And then 1 week, boom, everything's online, right? So it's kind of ironic there. But in terms of HBCUs, how do we take advantage of this, right? We have a situation where we're exposing online learning to all of the faculty. We're exposing it to all of the students. And so I think it's really critical for us as HBCUs and folks in the HBCU family to say, hey, how can we turn this into a strength, right? How can we leverage this to not only say this is what we'll do, but how we can do it well? What are the best learning pedagogies for online instruction for African Americans, for HBCU students? How can we bring that culture and that HBCU culture to an online space? I think that's one of the things that has to be figured out so that we can take advantage of this and use it to scale. I mean, you look at a lot of these for-profit institutions, they built their business on the back of Black students that need online education experiences, right? And because HBCUs have not been present to provide that for them. And so I hope and I pray that HBCUs take advantage of this opportunity to move into that space, and we can actually grow because of this, because we can cater to a different type of student, one that needs an online experience compared to these students that are doing it.
There's a lot of speculation and even conjecture that this is going to hurt HBCUs more than other institutions, more resourced, predominantly white institutions. There's been some articles written about it. There's been some interviews that I've done about it. And I keep hearing, do you think some HBCUs will close because of it? And what I've always said is that, HBCUs have endured worse. Like, this is new for predominantly white institutions, but HBCUs have had to deal with, a lot of calamities across our, more than a century of existence. And so, I think HBCUs will show the resilience that they've shown in the past. But what do you think about that? What would you say to the ones who are concerned that HBCUs will be disparately impacted by this, and that some HBCUs may not even recover?
So I love this question, right? So I'm gonna break down in 3 parts. One, I think leadership in the college, I think is really gonna make a big difference. I think those schools that have the right leadership will stand out compared to those that don't, or those that are in between leadership and fluctuating leadership statuses and things like that. I think too, the resource thing is real, right? It's so much misconception about what schools actually have. I'm a part of the institutional budget committee at Morehouse, and this year, and this is my first year on the committee, just got started this year, but it's been eye-opening to understand how institutional finances really work. I think people think that an endowment is the equivalent of like a savings account. Yeah. And so if you get in a money crunch, you just pull from the endowment and you're good. But people don't understand a lot of the endowment money is tied up to where it's just not liquid cash, right? That you can spend. And so, but most colleges just don't have the liquid cash to absorb a hit in not only the housing revenue, but all of your auxiliary revenue, such as things like parking. People don't think about the parking deck, right? And that revenue and what you lose from just your parking. That's just one small example. Any money you make from homecoming, let's say, right? If you're not having homecoming. So I think that it's definitely going to be a challenge for a lot of schools. And I think a lot of schools are going to be hit harder than others. But to kind of turn it around, I think the one strength that HBCUs have kind of piggybacks what you said is the ingenuity, right? Mm-hmm. The flexibility. We're scrappy by nature, right? And so we know how to rub 2 quarters together and make $1. And I think that will be critical for us. At the same time, I feel like you will have to put some real resources to make sure that these kids are safe. You will have to pay for PPE. You will have to pay for additional staff to come and make sure that rooms are cleaned and things like that. You will have to make sure that you provide external instructional designers to make sure that the classes that are taught are correctly converted to online classes. So it's definitely a resource need. I think in reality, a lot of schools are gonna make decisions that aren't based on safety and that are just based on survival.
Yeah. And
I pray that there's not a lot of really bad consequences to that, because like I said, there is no model where there's people just got this big cash savings, right? And so I hope everything can work out.
Yeah, absolutely. And your area of expertise really strikes at the heart of the solution. So culturally relevant computing. And that's something that a lot of people don't even really know a lot about. A lot of people just see computing as something very technical and cultural relevance being confined to the social sciences. They don't really see culturally relevant education in computing. But when we think about, how are we going to take an institution like Morehouse and have online education, education that's based on the interaction between humans and computers, and give them that Morehouse experience, the solution can only come from culturally relevant computing. So talk a little bit about your own research and how there could be some solutions embedded in that in merging into this virtual platform.
So I'll give you one, I feel like, good example. We just wrapped up last week a 2-week virtual app development camp. We had it for middle and high school students. It's really crazy. We advertised this camp, just sending it to the alumni and just posting on our social media accounts. In 10 days, we had 160 applicants. We ran the program with 75 students. We chose app development as a way to teach people coding, these kids coding, because Black kids need an artifact. They need something more tangible than a printout on a screen to show that they're engaged. That's what the literature says. And so for a kid to go and say, hey, mom, look what I made this app, you can actually work on it. That's something that makes a big difference versus saying, hey, here is this command line code, and this doesn't look like something that is exciting, right? The concepts will be the same, but the interface and how it looks will make a difference between a student wanting to engage in this and them not wanting to engage, right? And so I feel like HBCUs really have to get on top of this and learn what are these best practices around teaching tech and teaching it in a culture relevant way, because the reality is that these companies are fighting and clamoring for people. Those that have strong computing programs are going to reap the benefits of it, and those that don't have strong computing programs are going to suffer because of it. And the reality is that if jobs are moving in that computer space, that's going to make a big impact on where students go to school. And it's critical that you're prepared to make sure that these students have a good learning experience in these spaces, because that's going to make the decision between people going to your school or not.
And we know that there's a lot of research going on across Morehouse College. What's some other exciting research initiatives besides your own that you can think of, and some of the researchers at Morehouse College that you think we should be looking out for?
So one I'm really excited about, we just got an award from the National Science Foundation to study coding boot camps. Mm-hmm. And I have a postdoctoral researcher that I'm funding from a grant to look at preparation courses, for lack of a better word, or programs to prepare people to do well in coding boot camps. Most people just think that the pathway to a computing job is to get a 4-year degree in computer science. What a lot of folks in the African-American community don't realize is that a lot of people are doing 12-week boot camps and they're going to work and they're making, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. They're getting jobs at Google and JP Morgan Chase and Amazon for doing 12 weeks, 14-week boot camp programs. And so when you think about the situation now with COVID and the massive job losses going on, and this desire for a lot of people to use this as an opportunity to reskill into future careers, this coding bootcamp thing is front and center. And so the grant that we have is looking at not only just coding boot camps, but how do we bring in African Americans from different backgrounds, and how do we specialize a program to prepare them to do well in those coding boot camps? Sometimes the coding boot camps nationally can be hard to get in, like colleges, because you can't have a boot camp and have somebody that, if you think about a real boot camp, right? You just can't put anybody in a real boot camp. You need people that are gonna have the perseverance and the technical background to be successful in that boot camp. But when you have people from different demographics, you have to account for that. And how do you prepare someone for that boot camp? Even just the mental stress of a boot camp, students have to be prepared for that. And so our research will study what are those factors that we can identify that students need to be prepared for and prep for in order for them to be successful in this coding bootcamp experience.
Any other research at Morehouse outside of tech that you're familiar with?
And I can talk about this, the whole mixtape. You could have a whole mixtape series on Kinnis's research at Morehouse. Like, I promise you, I will fill every episode. I'll give you one more. So We actually have a research grant from the company Autodesk. If anybody's ever heard of the programs like Maya that's used for animation, and AutoCAD, a lot of construction people, engineers use. So Autodesk actually we have a grant with Autodesk where we're actually partnering to do research on one of their software applications, Fusion 360. Really cool project. I don't know if I'm allowed to share too many intimate details on it, but we have a few Morehouse students that's working on it. We have Khalil Robinson, we have Joshua Curry, Rodney Sampson Jr., and Homer Robinson. We have those students that are going to work on this project this semester. It's a funded project, so students will be paid to work on it. And it will start in August and wrap up at the end of May.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits of going to a school like Morehouse College. The students, undergraduate students, are able to get involved in research that only graduate students could be involved at the big Research One institutions. So that's another really, really important aspect of the campus. So what would you say are some specific things that HBCUs could learn from your research that can help them to maintain a student-centered culture, even through distance learning?
So that's a really good question. And with our virtual app development camp, we found out there was a huge demand for parents to put their kids in programs over the summer. A lot of parents are concerned, we found out, in terms of will their school systems provide their students with the proper education in this distance platform. We did very well with our camp in terms of having paid camp participants. And so as students struggle financially, especially with the losses that they're taking with COVID, then I think this could be a way to generate some extra unrestricted revenue, is by looking at models where where HBCUs essentially kind of fill the void in that supplementary instruction for students over the summer by leveraging your faculty to teach concepts and make sure that these students are learning as much as possible during this troubling time. And so opportunities like that, I think, could provide additional revenue for colleges. I think it's one thing to put something in a journal, right? And it's another to say, hey, here's the best practice that will actually keep the lights on, right? And so, I think that the alumni bases at these institutions provide a customer base for these type of programs, right? People want to send their kids to their alma mater's summer program. So I think that's a huge opportunity for HBCUs to get in that game in terms of virtual programs.
Well, what's next for you personally and professionally?
I'm a big sports data nerd. Most people don't know that. So Morehouse is about to enter a partnership with a leading massive online open course provider. And I am excited to develop a course or a certification in sports analytics. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time this fall working on that. I'm super excited about that. There's a couple of pro sports teams and a couple of retired athletes that are familiar with this and are interested in collaborating. So I'm really passionate about teaching kids. I'm biased around computing, right? So I think sports analytics is a really cool way to get somebody interested in computing in a way that interests them, so that even if they learn the materials, they don't have to go into sports analytics. They can just go into analytics and make a really good salary, right? But I think it makes things like coding and computing approachable. You feel more comfortable to pursue it if it's wrapped up in something like sports analytics.
On HBCU Mixtape, we always ask whoever we interview, what's your favorite hip hop artist, or what's your favorite line from a hip hop song?
So I'm gonna give you my verse, right? So I'm gonna give some context to it. I'm a Jay-Z fan too. It's one song I play by Jay-Z that I play every time I get down. And so you know this as much as anybody. If you in the academy, you're gonna have some down days. It's gonna be you're gonna get some emails, or you're gonna get a decision, a grant rejected, or it's gonna be times you be like, man, you should get down. But in the space that we work in, you can't let rejection slow you up, because you can't be in these funks, right? You have to keep progressing and keep moving on. And so Jay-Z has this song with Notorious B.I.G. on this Blueprint album called A Dream. The verse is, I see, I said, jealousy, I said, got the whole industry mad at me, I said, then I said, remind yourself, nobody built like you design yourself. And so I love the song, but that's like my main verse in the song, because I did design myself. It's not another Kinnis Gosha. And so I say that because I have to keep moving and moving forward, because that's me. If I'm not gonna do it, who is gonna do it? And so I have to tell myself I'm at a level so high that even though the challenge I'm faced with may slow down most people, I have to be above that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, you know, like I know in this game, you got to be better. Like you got to be so much better than the next person at the same role, you know? And so I have to remind myself, like, no, Kinnis, you gotta take it to the next level. You know what I'm saying? This is what you do.
That's powerful, man. The song has worked well for you. Morehouse looks good on you, and keep striving and doing what you're doing. All of us in the HBCU community is very proud of the work that you're doing, and it's relatively early in your career, but you've already made such a huge impact. And we're just so fortunate to have you within the HBCU community, and the world greatly benefits from the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for joining us on HBCU Mixtape.